The airport was buzzing with the usual chaos, people rushing to gates, announcements echoing overhead, the constant shuffle of luggage on carts. But amid the ordinary commotion, a shocking scene unfolded that would leave everyone frozen in disbelief. A security officer, his face tight with authority and his temper unchecked, grabbed a black woman by the throat without warning. Passengers gasped, some pulling out phones to record the incident, their whispers blending into a murmur of outrage and confusion. What the officer didn't know, what no one in that terminal could have guessed, was that the woman he was assaulting was no ordinary traveler. She was a highly trained secret agent, someone whose skills, intelligence, and courage had saved lives and foiled criminal plots, all while remaining completely anonymous. Welcome back to Swift Tale, where we dive deep into stories that shock, inspire, and leave you questioning the ordinary. And if this is your first time here, let me ask you something. Do you love stories filled with unexpected twists, courage under pressure, and jaw-dropping reveals? If your answer is yes, then make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss one of our unbelievable tales. Today's story is a powerful reminder that appearances can be deceiving. On the surface, it may have looked like a simple case of misconduct at an airport, but beneath the chaos was a narrative about bravery, hidden strength, and the consequences of prejudice. It matters because it forces us to reflect on the assumptions we make, the biases we carry, and the importance of holding people accountable for their actions. What happened that day wasn't just a confrontation. It was a lesson in courage, dignity, and the hidden power that some people carry quietly, waiting for the moment the world truly needs to see it. So buckle up, because what started as a shocking act of aggression is about to turn into a story of calculated strategy, unexpected heroism, and a dramatic reveal that no one in that terminal or watching online will ever forget. Long before the shocking incident at the airport, she had lived a life that few could ever imagine. On the surface, she seemed like any other professional woman, confident, intelligent, and composed. But behind the calm exterior was a lifetime of rigorous training, discipline, and a career built on secrecy. From a young age, she had been exceptional, curious, determined, and fearless. Her family instilled in her the values of courage, resilience, and responsibility, lessons she carried into every challenge she faced. Her education was impressive, but it was a training that truly set her apart. She was recruited into a top-secret government program as a young adult, where she mastered advanced combat, espionage, cybersecurity, and tactical strategy. Every skill she learned was honed to perfection, making her a formidable agent who could navigate high-stakes missions around the world while keeping her identity hidden. To the public, she appeared ordinary, blending seamlessly into everyday life. To those who knew her secret, she was nothing short of extraordinary, a person whose abilities could turn the tide in situations that most could not even comprehend. Despite the intensity of her career, she maintained a grounded sense of self. She was careful, observant, and strategic, never revealing more than necessary and always acting with purpose. She understood the power of restraint, and that strength often came not from force, but from intelligence and timing. Her life was a careful balance of secrecy and skill, a world invisible to the casual observer. All of this shaped her into the person who would face the airport officer that day, not with panic or fear, but with calm precision. Her extraordinary background, concealed beneath a seemingly ordinary appearance, meant that when she finally revealed her true abilities, it would not only astonish those who had wronged her, but serve as a dramatic lesson in power, judgment, and respect. The morning of the flight began like any other, with the familiar hum of the city waking up and the soft glow of sunrise spilling through her window. She moved with the effortless confidence of someone accustomed to being in control, her schedule packed, yet meticulously organized. Though she carried the weight of high-stakes missions in her mind, she presented nothing but calm professionalism to the world. A cab ride to the airport passed quietly, punctuated by subtle mental checks of her itinerary and security protocols, habits she had developed over years of living a life that demanded constant vigilance. She entered the terminal. The atmosphere seemed ordinary, a mix of travelers hustling to gates, the low roar of announcements, and the rhythmic click of luggage wheels against the floor. Staff greeted her politely, assuming she was just another passenger, unaware of the extraordinary life she led outside their perception. But beneath her composed exterior, she was attuned to the nuances of her surroundings, the subtle shifts in tone, the quick glances, and the unspoken tensions that most would overlook. Something in the air felt off, an almost imperceptible tension that pricked her instincts, reminding her that in her line of work, caution was always necessary. She approached security with measured calm, presenting her identification and boarding pass with ease, answering questions briefly yet clearly. Her movements were natural, unhurried, the kind of confidence that comes from years of training and experience. Passengers noticed her poise, perhaps assuming it was confidence born of career success, unaware that it stemmed from survival, discipline, and the quiet mastery of skills few could imagine. Seated briefly near her gate, she scanned the crowd with a trained eye, observing subtle interactions and noting patterns that might hint at potential threats. Even in the mundane setting of an airport, she was alert, ready, and calculating, a predator in plain sight disguised as an ordinary professional. Yet nothing could have fully prepared the people around her, or the officer who would soon confront her, for the storm of truth, precision, and capability that was about to be unleashed. The terminal, bustling with oblivious travelers, was about to witness an encounter that would redefine assumptions, challenge authority, and reveal the hidden power of someone who had always been underestimated. It started with a sharp command that cut through the low murmur of the terminal. "Step over here, ma'am." The woman looked up calmly, her eyes locking on the officer with a mix of curiosity and control, as if reading the tension radiating from him. What began as a routine security stop escalated in an instant when the officer, his temper unchecked and assumptions unchecked, reached forward and grabbed her by the throat. Shock rippled through the nearby passengers, some gasping, others instinctively reaching for their phones to record the unfolding drama. The terminal, once mundane and predictable, had transformed into a stage for a confrontation no one could have anticipated. She felt the officer's grip tighten, but there was no panic, only calculated awareness. Her training kicked in instinctively, every movement, every breath measured, ready to respond with precision if needed. Years of missions, stealth operations, and life-or-death scenarios had prepared her for far worse than this, and yet the audacity of the act fueled a quiet, controlled fury. "Release me," she said, her voice calm yet commanding, cutting through the chaos like a blade. Her tone demanded compliance, not just respect, and even as the officer hesitated, she exuded the unmistakable presence of someone who was in control, no matter the apparent disadvantage. Passengers and nearby staff could see the power in her composure. It wasn't aggression, they could feel it was authority born of experience and skill. The officer, initially confident in his authority, began to sense that he had misjudged the situation. Every instinct in her body screamed caution, but she remained outwardly collected, ready to act decisively if the confrontation escalated further. In that tense, suspended moment, the air was thick with uncertainty. She had the option to react, to defend herself physically, but she knew timing and strategy would matter more than immediate force. This wasn't just about correcting a wrong, it was about sending a message that underestimating someone with knowledge, skill, and hidden power could have consequences far beyond the terminal. Passengers held their breath as the drama unfolded, completely unaware that they were witnessing the first act in a sequence that would soon reveal the extraordinary truth. The woman they thought they saw as ordinary was anything, but the tension in the terminal thickened with every passing second. Passengers whispered in disbelief, their phones capturing the officer's aggression and the woman's calm response. Some moved closer to intervene, though most hesitated, unsure how to act in a situation escalating so quickly. The officer's grip had not yet released, and the standoff drew all eyes, creating a ripple of shock and fear across the crowd. Yet she remained composed, every movement deliberate, every expression controlled. Her presence radiated authority without the need for aggression, a silent warning that she was far from ordinary. Inside her mind, the gears were already turning. She assessed the crowd, the officer's behavior, and the environment with the precision of someone trained to survive high-stakes encounters. Each passenger, each staff member, became part of a mental map of the terminal, every detail catalogued and considered. The officer, confident moments earlier, was beginning to hesitate, sensing an invisible power he could not understand. He had assumed dominance, but her composed response was recalibrating the balance of control. The murmurs among passengers grew louder as the absurdity of the situation became clear. "Why is he doing that?" one whispered. "She didn't do anything," another said. Eyes darted back and forth between the aggressor and the woman, the tension now palpable, the drama unfolding like a scene from a movie, but far more real and immediate. Even as she stayed calm, subtle hints of her extraordinary capabilities began to emerge. A controlled stance, sharp, measured eye contact, and a quiet energy that made the officer's presence feel suddenly fragile. By now, the terminal staff realized that they had miscalculated. Attempts to intervene were hesitant, faltering, their uncertainty amplifying the scene's intensity. Passengers sensed the shift, the invisible force that separated ordinary humans from someone trained for extraordinary situations. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation, as everyone waited to see what would happen next. What they did not yet realize was that this confrontation would not only expose prejudice and ignorance, but reveal a hidden mastery, a power that could turn a moment of danger into a lesson in strategy, authority, and absolute control. The scene was no longer just a confrontation. It had become a demonstration of calm dominance under pressure, an unspoken warning to anyone who assumed they could judge, intimidate, or control her. The terminal had become a classroom, and she was teaching a lesson no one would forget. The moment to reveal her true identity came with the precision of someone who had spent a lifetime mastering timing, perception, and impact. The officer still held onto his misconception of control, unaware that he was confronting someone trained to handle far more dangerous situations than an aggressive terminal encounter. She didn't rush the revelation. Instead, she allowed subtle cues to speak first, an unyielding calm in her posture, a sharpness in her gaze, and a presence so commanding that even nearby passengers began to notice the imbalance of power. Every movement suggested control, every pause suggested calculation, and the officer's growing unease confirmed that she had begun to turn the tables. Then with deliberate clarity she spoke, her voice low but resolute. "You should know exactly who you're dealing with." The words hung in the air, carrying weight beyond the immediate confrontation. The officer froze, confusion spreading across his face as he finally sensed the depth of his misjudgment. Passengers leaned in, some whispering, others wide-eyed, as they witnessed the first cracks in the officer's facade of authority. He had thought this was routine, yet here stood someone whose experience, skill, and confidence completely eclipsed his assumptions. Her revelation didn't need to be loud or aggressive, it needed only to be precise. She displayed control over her body, her voice, and the environment, making it clear that any further misstep would not go unaddressed. Subtle gestures, measured movements, and the aura of a highly trained professional communicated far more than words ever could. Even the staff, initially unsure of how to act, now instinctively understood that she was no ordinary traveler. This was someone whose identity and capabilities demanded immediate recognition and respect. Passengers' reactions shifted from shock to awe as the realization settled in. The officer's grip slackened, hesitation replacing aggression, as he instinctively recognized he was outmatched. For her, the moment was both personal and strategic. She had demonstrated authority, neutralized immediate danger, and ensured that the incident would leave a lasting lesson without unnecessary escalation. In revealing her true identity, she had transformed the airport terminal into a stage where prejudice collided with skill, and where assumptions were met with undeniable reality. By the end of that tense exchange, it was clear to everyone present that the woman they had underestimated was not only capable, but in complete control of the situation, and that her presence alone could redefine the boundaries of respect, authority, and consequence. The moment of reckoning came with a subtle shift in the officer's posture. His confidence, once unshakable, began to falter as he fully grasped the truth. The woman he had assumed was vulnerable, ordinary, and powerless was anything but. His eyes widened, the grip on his authority loosening, as he processed the revelation that he was facing a highly trained secret agent, someone whose skill, precision, and experience dwarfed his own. The reality hit him like a shockwave. He had misjudged a force of competence and courage far beyond anything he could have imagined. Around them, passengers and staff watched in stunned silence, some holding their breaths, others whispering among themselves. The terminal, which had moments ago been a scene of chaos, now hung on a suspended awareness, every onlooker sensing the profound imbalance of power. He had assumed control, yet the balance had shifted entirely. The air around her was calm but electric, radiating the authority of someone who had faced danger far greater than this and emerged not just unscathed, but dominant. He tried to compose himself, fumbling with words and gestures, but the subtle confidence she exuded left no room for false authority. The passengers, once shocked and fearful, now began to admire the woman's poise, her intelligence, and her unshakable command of the situation. Every move she made communicated mastery, every measured breath reinforced control, and every glance reminded the officer that he was no longer in charge. In that moment, he realized the gravity of his mistake, not just the immediate error of aggression, but the deeper misjudgment of underestimating someone based on appearances. The lesson was undeniable. Authority without knowledge, assumptions without understanding, and prejudice without awareness could lead to humiliation, and in this case, near disaster. The officer's panic, now tinged with fear and awe, underscored the contrast between recklessness and disciplined power, between arrogance and mastery. By the time the confrontation reached its quiet apex, it was clear that respect had been irrevocably demanded, and that the woman, who had been underestimated and assaulted, now commanded the room with effortless authority. Her revelation had transformed what began as an act of aggression into a vivid demonstration of power, strategy, and undeniable competence. With the officer's realization came a critical moment, the chance to regain full control, not through force, but through strategy and presence. Every step she took was deliberate, every gesture measured, projecting authority so absolute that the terminal itself seemed to recognize the shift in power. She spoke calmly, yet every word carried weight. "This ends now. Everyone here deserves to be safe and respected." Her tone left no room for argument or hesitation, immediately neutralizing the tension and asserting dominance over the chaotic scene. Passengers who had moments ago felt fear and confusion now watched in awe as she orchestrated the resolution with precision. She subtly positioned herself between the officer and the crowd, maintaining control without resorting to unnecessary aggression. Her eyes scanned the room, assessing each potential threat, ensuring that no one would be harmed and that no escalation could occur. Even the staff, previously uncertain and panicked, instinctively followed her lead, understanding that she commanded the authority to manage the situation effectively. The officer, now painfully aware of his misjudgment, fumbled for words, his body language betraying a combination of fear, embarrassment, and awe. She didn't need to raise her voice or demonstrate physical superiority. Her presence alone communicated power and competence far beyond his own. Through subtle maneuvers, measured commands, and quiet confidence, she turned what had been a potentially volatile confrontation into a controlled, safe, and decisive resolution. Passengers recorded the scene, but this time their focus was not on aggression, it was on the woman's mastery of the moment. She had taken an act of violence, prejudice, and ignorance, and transformed it into a lesson in strategy, calm authority, and personal power. Every action reinforced her position as someone not to be underestimated, and every pause emphasized that the consequences of misjudgment were real and immediate. By the end of the encounter, the officer's dominance was thoroughly dismantled, replaced by a hesitant compliance and an unspoken acknowledgement of her authority. The terminal, once chaotic, now carried a sense of respect, order, and quiet amazement at the woman who had turned aggression into a demonstration of unparalleled skill, calm, and control. She had not just survived the encounter, she had mastered it. Once the confrontation ended, the terminal slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the impact of the encounter lingered in the air like an electric charge. Passengers who had witnessed the ordeal whispered in amazement, replaying the moment in their minds and on their phones. Staff exchanged nervous glances, realizing they had just underestimated someone extraordinary, and the officer himself stood frozen, grappling with the weight of his mistake. The lesson was clear. Assumptions and prejudice could not stand against skill, intelligence, and calm authority. As the crowd settled, the woman's demeanor remained composed, almost serene, as if the entire ordeal had been anticipated. She ensured the officer was safely removed from the situation, not with aggression, but with precision and controlled authority. Her focus extended beyond personal vindication. She wanted to ensure that everyone around her understood the importance of accountability, respect, and professionalism. In that quiet dominance, she imparted a lesson without needing to raise her voice. Real power manifests in composure, strategy, and integrity. The incident quickly spread through social media, passengers sharing clips of the officer's aggression juxtaposed with her calm, commanding response. The story became a vivid example of the dangers of underestimating someone based on appearance, as well as the consequences of bias and arrogance. People from around the world recognized the courage and skill displayed, sparking conversations about respect, authority, and the hidden strength individuals may carry. For her, the episode reinforced the value of restraint, intelligence, and timing. She reflected on how easily situations could escalate when assumptions went unchallenged, and how often people are judged by appearances rather than capabilities. Yet she also recognized the power of a single, measured response to transform a moment of injustice into a lesson that resonated far beyond the immediate scene. By the end of the day, the terminal was no longer simply a place of transit. It had become a stage for a story of courage, strategy, and the triumph of competence over prejudice. Passengers, staff, and the officer had all learned that true authority does not demand recognition. It commands it through skill, composure, and the quiet, undeniable weight of one who knows her power. As the terminal slowly returned to routine, the lessons of the day lingered far beyond the confines of the airport. What began as an act of aggression, a racist officer's violent misjudgment, had transformed into a story of authority, skill, and restraint. The woman, underestimated and assaulted, had shown that true power is measured not by force alone, but by intelligence, composure, and the ability to turn even the most dangerous situation into a lesson in accountability. She left the terminal unshaken, her presence commanding respect not only from those who had witnessed the confrontation, but from anyone who would hear of it afterward. This story is more than a shocking incident. It is a reminder of the dangers of prejudice, the importance of awareness, and the strength that can lie hidden beneath an ordinary exterior. Courage is not always loud. It is strategic, precise, and often invisible until the right moment. And when that moment arrives, the consequences of underestimation become undeniable. Her actions reinforced a universal truth. Dignity, skill, and patience can overcome aggression, ignorance, and bias, leaving lessons that resonate long after the event itself. Here on Swift Tale, we bring you stories that shock, inspire, and challenge your perception of what is possible. If today's story left you as stunned and inspired as it did us, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the incredible tales we uncover. And I want to hear from you. Comment below with your thoughts. How would you have handled the situation? Have you ever faced a moment when appearances deceived you or someone's true strength surprised you? Your perspective matters, and the conversation continues here on Swift Tale. The airport may have returned to normal, but the impact of her presence and the lesson she delivered lingered in the minds of all who witnessed it. She reminded the world that hidden strength, courage, and intelligence can turn injustice into a demonstration of undeniable authority, and that respect, once earned through skill and composure, leaves an imprint that can never be erased.